What happens when Kit Harington sits across the table from Joy Behar and the conversation takes a turn nobody in the studio expects? Make sure to subscribe to Final Take Files, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The cameras roll. The audience claps as the hosts introduce Kit, talking about his latest project and, of course, revisiting the legacy of Game of Thrones. Joy smiles, but there's already that familiar tone in her voice. Playful, but sharp. Joy leans forward. So, Kit, you played this brooding hero for years. Very serious, very tortured. Do you ever get tired of being the sad, whispering guy on screen? Audience laughs lightly. Kit smiles politely. I think Jon Snow whispered because he was usually surrounded by people shouting, he replies calmly. It wasn't a creative choice to mumble. The crowd chuckles again. Joy tilts her head. But come on, you have to admit, there was a lot of staring into the distance. Well, Kit says, still smiling, when you're facing ice zombies and political betrayal, you tend to reflect a bit. A few louder laughs. One of the co-hosts jumps in. That's fair. Joy doesn't back off. Some critics said your character didn't show enough emotional range. That he was flat. There's a small "oh" from the audience. Kit pauses. Not angry. Not defensive. Just steady. I think sometimes restraint gets mistaken for lack of emotion, he says. Jon was raised in a world where vulnerability could get you killed. So when he did show emotion, losing Ygritte, losing his family, it meant something. The audience applauds softly. Joy shrugs. Sure, but television is about big moments. Big performances. And I think we had a few of those, Kit replies. Battle of the Bastards wasn't exactly subtle. The audience cheers at the reference. One co-host laughs and says, that was not subtle at all. Joy crosses her arms lightly. I'm just saying, sometimes the show leaned more on spectacle than substance. Kit nods. That's a fair opinion. But the reason it resonated globally wasn't just dragons. It was people seeing power struggles, loyalty, fear, very human things. Joy interrupts. Or maybe it was just dragons. Audience laughter, louder this time. Kit doesn't laugh. He smiles again, but it's more controlled. Dragons help, he says. But if it were only dragons, it wouldn't have lasted 8 seasons. The crowd claps again, a bit stronger. One co-host tries to smooth it. I think what Joy is getting at is whether fantasy sometimes avoids real-world responsibility. Joy nods. Exactly. There's so much happening in the world. Politics, social justice, real issues. Do you ever feel like these epic fantasy stories distract from reality? Now the energy shifts slightly. The audience quiets. Kit answers carefully. I think storytelling has always been how we process reality. Shakespeare used kings and battles. Fantasy can be political without being literal. Joy jumps in quickly. But it's still escapism. Escapism isn't inherently negative, Kit replies. Sometimes people need space to think. Or to feel brave. Or to see consequences play out in exaggerated worlds. A few audience members clap again. Joy gives a half smile. So you're saying dragons are therapeutic? Kit laughs lightly this time. I'm saying people connect to stories for different reasons. Some want distraction. Some want reflection. Some want both. Another host nods. That's a good point. Joy leans back, but she's not done. You've been pretty vocal lately about mental health. That surprised some people. The tough warrior talking about vulnerability. Kit's expression shifts, more serious now. Why is that surprising? Joy raises her eyebrows. Well, the image. The image was a character, he says gently. Not me. There's a murmur of agreement from the audience. Joy presses. But don't you think actors sometimes blur that line? Fans see you as Jon Snow. And that's flattering, Kit replies. But if I stayed silent about real struggles because of a fictional sword, that would be irresponsible. That lands. The audience claps louder. Joy glances at her co-hosts, then back at Kit. So you think speaking out is part of the job? I think being honest is part of being human, Kit says. If someone relates to a character I played, and hearing me talk about anxiety or rehab helps them seek help, that matters more than preserving an image. There's a strong round of applause now. Joy nods slowly, but her tone sharpens again. But some critics say celebrities talking about their struggles can feel performative. A few audience members react audibly. Kit doesn't flinch. It can be, if it's used as branding. But silence can also be harmful. I'd rather risk being called performative than pretend everything's perfect. One co-host claps. That's honest. Joy studies him for a moment. You're very composed. I try to be, he says. Live television encourages that. Audience laughs. Joy smiles thinly. So you're not rattled? Should I be? He asks lightly. Another ripple of laughter. Joy leans in once more. Let me put it this way. When the final season aired, there was backlash. Petitions. Angry fans. Did you feel personally attacked? The audience shifts again. This is sensitive territory. Kit nods slowly. I felt protective of the people who worked incredibly hard. It's okay for audiences to dislike something. But there's a difference between criticism and cruelty. Joy interrupts. But when millions sign a petition, it doesn't change the years of effort, he says, still calm. Or the relationships built. Or the pride in what we created. Applause again. Joy folds her hands. Some would say that's deflecting. Kit's smile fades just slightly. No. It's perspective. There's a pause. The studio feels quieter. One co-host quickly says, "We're going to take a quick break." Joy cuts in before the music hits. When we come back, I want to talk about whether actors should separate themselves more from controversial endings. The audience murmurs again. Kit nods once. Happy to. The cameras pull back as the applause swells, but there's an edge in the air now. It's no longer light teasing. It's turning into something sharper, a real disagreement about art, responsibility, and criticism. And you can feel it building. The cameras come back from break, and the applause fades. The energy in the studio feels tighter now. Not hostile, but focused. Joy jumps in almost immediately. Before the break, we were talking about backlash. Let's stay there. When millions of fans are disappointed, does responsibility fall on the actors at all? Kit sits upright, hands loosely folded. Responsibility for what, exactly? For the product, Joy says. You're the face people see. One of many faces, he corrects gently. Television is collaborative. Writers, directors, editors, hundreds of crew members. Joy nods, but presses. But you're the one on screen delivering those lines. And I delivered them to the best of my ability, he replies. That's my responsibility. A few claps from the audience. Joy raises an eyebrow. So no accountability? That's not what I said, Kit answers calmly. Accountability and blame aren't the same thing. There's a small murmur. One co-host leans in. Explain that. Kit nods. I'm accountable for my performance. If someone doesn't like how I acted a scene, that's fair. But I can't rewrite the script. I can't restructure a season. Joy interrupts, slightly sharper. But you could have pushed back. You assume I didn't, he says quietly. The audience reacts with a soft, oh. Joy pauses. Did you? Kit holds her gaze. There were creative discussions. There always are. But at the end of the day, you trust the showrunners. That's how long-form television works. Joy leans back. Trust that maybe wasn't deserved. Some nervous laughter from the crowd. Kit exhales slowly, but keeps his tone even. I'm not going to sit here and publicly criticize people I worked with for nearly a decade. Applause breaks out, louder this time. Joy gestures with her hand. So loyalty over honesty? Loyalty can be honesty, Kit replies. You can acknowledge flaws without tearing down the people behind them. One co-host nods. That's fair. Joy shakes her head slightly. But don't fans deserve transparency? They deserve respect, Kit says. And respect includes not turning professional disagreements into public spectacle. The audience claps again. Joy presses again. But isn't this show about spectacle? Laughter spreads across the room. Kit smiles faintly. Debate isn't the same as spectacle. Joy leans in. Okay, let me ask you this. When fans say the ending betrayed the character, that Jon Snow would never make that final choice, do you agree with them? There's that familiar tension again. Kit pauses. I think fans formed deep attachments. And that's beautiful. But characters grow. They break. They make impossible decisions. Joy cuts in. Or they're written into corners. A few scattered claps from different sides of the audience. Kit nods slowly. Sometimes. But tragedy isn't betrayal. It's tragedy. The room quiets for a second. One co-host says softly, "That's an interesting distinction." Joy tilts her head. "So you stand by it? All of it?" "I stand by the effort," he says. "And the journey." Joy smirks slightly. "That sounds very diplomatic." "It's not diplomacy," Kit replies. "It's perspective." She studies him. "You're very careful." "I'm thoughtful," he corrects, still composed. There's a stronger reaction from the audience now, a mix of applause and murmurs. Joy sighs dramatically. "See, this is what I mean. You actors are trained to avoid giving straight answers." Kit's expression tightens just a little, the first visible crack. "I've answered every question directly." Joy shakes her head. "Not really." The audience reacts again, louder this time. Kit doesn't raise his voice. "You asked if I felt attacked. I said I felt protective. You asked if I was responsible. I said I'm responsible for my work. You asked if I agree with every decision. I said it's complicated." He pauses. "That's not avoiding. That's nuance." The audience breaks into firm applause. Joy blinks, slightly taken aback by the reaction. Nuance doesn't always satisfy viewers. "No," Kit agrees. "But real life rarely fits into simple answers." A co-host jumps in, trying to ease the intensity. "I think what's happening here is a clash between artistic process and audience expectation." Joy nods but doesn't smile. "Or between candor and caution." Kit leans slightly forward now. "You want candor?" Joy meets his gaze. "Yes." He takes a breath. "Okay. It hurt. The backlash hurt. Seeing people dismiss years of work as worthless, that hurt. But I also understand passion. I'd rather people care too much than not at all." There's a wave of applause, louder than before. Joy softens just a bit. "That's honest." "I try to be," he says quietly. "But," Joy continues, "would you change anything?" Kit thinks for a moment. The pause stretches. The studio is silent. "I would protect the people involved from personal attacks," he finally says. "That's what I'd change. The cruelty." Joy leans back, folding her arms again. "So you still won't say the ending was flawed?" Kit looks at her steadily. "Everything is flawed. That doesn't mean it's meaningless." A strong round of applause follows. Joy glances toward the audience, then back at him. "You're very good at this." "At what?" he asks. "Staying calm under fire." He smiles slightly. "It's not fire. It's conversation." Joy gives a short laugh. "Trust me, sometimes it's fire." The audience laughs with her. Kit nods. "Then I'm glad we're just talking." There's a brief silence, not awkward but charged. Joy looks like she's weighing her next move. "Let's shift slightly," she says. "There's been criticism about fantasy shows lacking diversity and modern social awareness. Do you think your show did enough?" And just like that, the tension shifts into a new direction. Heavier, more political, more complicated. Kit straightens slightly, preparing his answer. The audience senses it too. This isn't over. The studio stays quiet for a beat after Joy's question about diversity and responsibility in fantasy television. Kit nods slowly. "It's a valid discussion," he begins. "Television absolutely shapes culture. And the industry has changed a lot over the last decade. Joy leans forward. That's not the question. The question is, did your show do enough? A small murmur moves through the audience. Kit keeps his tone steady. I think it reflected the source material and the time it was made. That doesn't mean it was perfect. No show is. Joy interrupts. That sounds like a diplomatic way of saying, maybe not. He shakes his head lightly. It sounds like honesty. You can acknowledge progress without rewriting the past. A few audience members clap. Joy shifts gears. You've also spoken publicly about masculinity and vulnerability. Yet your most famous role was the stoic warrior who barely showed emotion. Isn't that a contradiction? It's evolution, Kit replies. Playing someone who suppresses emotion made me question that archetype in real life. Strength doesn't have to mean silence. That earns stronger applause. Joy raises an eyebrow. Or is it just Hollywood adjusting to trends? There's an audible reaction from the crowd. Kit's expression firms slightly. Personal growth isn't a trend. I went through things publicly. I talked about them because staying silent didn't help. The audience claps again, louder this time. Joy crosses her arms. But when controversy hit the show, you leaned heavily on "it's collaborative" and "it's complicated." Some people feel actors hide behind that. I don't hide, Kit says calmly. I respect the fact that hundreds of people built that series. If I have nuanced thoughts, I'm not going to turn them into a headline just to satisfy a moment. Applause spreads across the studio. Joy presses again. So you won't openly criticize the creative decisions. I won't reduce years of work and relationships into blame on live television, he replies. Criticism is fair. Personal attacks and public finger-pointing? That's different. One of the co-hosts nods. There's a line there. Joy looks unconvinced. You're very careful with your words. I'm thoughtful, Kit responds evenly. You asked serious questions. I'm giving serious answers. A mix of laughter and applause follows. Joy leans forward one more time. Do you think media sometimes fuels outrage? Kit doesn't hesitate. Yes. Outrage travels faster than nuance. That doesn't mean accountability isn't important. It just means conversations get flattened. The audience reacts, some clapping, some murmuring. Joy studies him. So you think we flatten things here? I think all live television simplifies, he says calmly. It has to. But I don't have to oversimplify my response. That line draws one of the biggest reactions yet. Joy glances briefly off camera, then back at him. You've gotten more direct. You wanted direct, he replies. The tension hangs there for a second, not explosive, but undeniable. Joy finally nods. All right. When we come back, I'm going to ask you something very simple. A yes or no question. The audience reacts instantly, a mix of cheers and anticipation. Kit sits back in his chair, composed but focused. Okay. The cameras begin to pull away as applause rises again. And you can feel it. The final question is going to force a moment that neither side can soften with nuance. The cameras come back for the final segment, and you can feel the shift immediately. The applause is louder, but there's anticipation underneath it. Joy turns toward Kit without smiling this time. All right, she says. I promised a simple question. Yes or no? Do you believe the final season satisfied the story you were telling? The audience reacts instantly, some clapping, some murmuring. Kit doesn't answer right away. He looks at her, then briefly at the audience. Joy jumps in. It's yes or no. He exhales lightly. That's not how storytelling works. The crowd reacts with a mix of laughter and applause. Joy shakes her head. No. That's exactly how this works. Yes or no. Kit leans forward slightly now. If I say yes, I dismiss the people who were disappointed. If I say no, I dismiss the people who were proud of it. So the honest answer is... Joy cuts in. You can't do that. Pick one. There's a tense pause. Kit's tone becomes firmer. The honest answer is that parts of it satisfied me, and parts of it were painful. That's real. The audience breaks into strong applause. Joy raises her hands slightly. That's not yes or no. It's truthful, he replies. The applause grows louder. Joy tries again. Were you happy with how Jon Snow's story ended? Kit looks straight at her. I was proud of the journey. Joy exhales sharply. That's not the ending. And the ending is part of the journey, he says calmly. A few audience members stand to clap. Joy tilts her head. So you won't criticize it? Kit's expression tightens, not angrily, but decisively. I won't reduce years of work and collaboration into a viral soundbite. If that's disappointing, I'm sorry. The audience responds with a wave of applause. Joy leans back, studying him. You realize people will say you're avoiding accountability. He nods. People can say that. But accountability doesn't mean public self-destruction. There's a strong reaction to that line. One of the co-hosts interjects carefully, I think what Kit's saying is there's a difference between reflection and spectacle. Joy looks at her, then back at Kit. So you're choosing dignity over drama. I'm choosing perspective, he says quietly. The room goes quiet for a beat, then applause builds again. Joy's tone softens slightly. You know, I push because viewers push us. They want clarity. And I respect that, Kit replies. But clarity isn't always simple. Sometimes it's layered. Joy gives a small smile. You're very good at this. Kit smiles back, but it's tired now. It's not about being good at it. It's about not turning complex human experiences into entertainment. That line lands heavily. The audience reacts loudly. Joy nods slowly. Fair enough. There's a pause, and for the first time all segment, neither of them interrupts the other. Then Joy turns toward the camera. Well, clearly this conversation isn't ending on Twitter anytime soon. The audience laughs. Kit adds lightly, I'll probably stay off it for a few days. More laughter. Joy extends her hand across the table. Thank you for sticking with it. He shakes her hand. Thank you for asking. The applause is strong now, not tense, but appreciative. As the credits music begins to rise, the camera pulls back and you can see the co-hosts leaning in to talk more casually. The tension has cooled, but the weight of the exchange lingers. By the time the episode ends, clips are already circulating online. Headlines split in two directions, some praising Kit for staying calm and composed, others accusing him of dodging a straight answer. Social media debates ignite within minutes. Some viewers applaud him for refusing to throw colleagues under the bus. Others argue Joy was right to demand clarity. Entertainment blogs replay the moment where he said, accountability doesn't mean public self-destruction. That becomes the quote of the day. Later that afternoon, behind the scenes, producers reportedly thank him for keeping the discussion controlled despite the tension. Joy, in a brief post-show comment, says she appreciates guests who can take the heat. The moment doesn't explode into scandal, but it becomes one of those segments people keep sharing, dissecting, debating. And that's what happens when strong opinions meet live television. What did you think? Was he composed or evasive? Was Joy pushing for accountability or for a headline? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Final Take Files for more real talk show stories.